Hey everyone, my name is Nick Elston. I'm an inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health. First question, yes, it's a proper job, I promise you. It's been my job for the past decade. With my other cap on, the other many caps that I own, I'm also a transformational speaking coach. It's not presentation skills you're about to bear witness to. It's how to change your narrative to change your experience. Very much about emotional storytelling. I think that's a commonality in what I do. So in the mental health space, I am not solution focused. I am not a coach, nor a counselor, nor your guru, nor would you want that in your life either. I'm far too empathic for that. Just agree with everybody. But for me, the gap is the engagement. Why is it that when we need help, we don't reach out for it? And that's the bit that I kind of live in this space. I work in lots of different spaces right across the board, predominantly with people leaders, but also I do a lot of work in PA, VA, EA, and office manager environments, supporting the people that look after people. And I don't have to tell you how much of responsibility that will take on you for sure. So we'll certainly look about how we can start to ease your burden when it comes to this stuff. I also do a lot of media work. So here in the UK and Europe, I work with BBC, ITV, and Sky. In the US, I've worked with NBC, delivering that lived experience angle alongside solution focused professionals. I do a lot of work in the armed forces through the Ministry of Defence, through the police force, fire service, and also for the NHS for frontline environments. I also do, I coach prisoners' public speaking skills as a transformational tool. And I also do the same in education as well. Parents will get this. Prisons, far easier than schools, trust me. Not only do they give me backup in prisons, I get armed backup in prisons. I don't get that in schools. I guess my crowning glory to date, though, and you won't get me in my all full glory today. Hopefully, when we meet in person, you'll absolutely see that I'm 6'4", a 23-stone guy. I ain't small. So my crowning glory has to be the host and creator of KFC TV. If you want to know more about that, let's connect away from me. I will quite happily share that with you. My business is called Forging People, and it came from a line in one of my early talks. In life, we can either allow our adversities and our challenges, all the things that we experience in life to negatively impact us for the rest of our days. That's a choice. Or maybe we can choose those things to forge something better, to forge something beautiful, something powerful, something that wouldn't have existed without you going through your stuff in the first place. For me, it's about igniting growth, it's about forging success. And that's exactly why I do what I do and created the business that I did. But it came from a backdrop of mental illness, actually. I experienced mental illness in my childhood. I developed obsessive compulsive disorder. As I got older in life, it morphed into something called generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, on top of the OCD that I was experiencing. Through education, I started to develop a kind of negative distraction techniques, such as things like people pleasing, because we fly completely under the radar when we try to be everything to everyone. I guess you've all had those days where you try and please everybody and you end up pleasing nobody. I kind of did that for a pastime. And that kind of formative period of experiencing mental health and mental challenges and mental illness in my youth actually led to a negative relationship with things like alcohol, in terms of body image, actually, and weight. Some of the things I'm not going to be able to go into today due to the time we have together. But my aim for today, if I'm not here to give you solutions and give you advice, which actually I'm not, my role is to give you the ammunition to ask better questions of yourself, for you to have better conversations with yourself about your own experiences. So even though some of this is set to the context of my experiences, this is absolutely about you and how this relates to you. So really pay attention to how you react as I talk about different aspects of life and also of business. As I got older into my corporate career, like all of you, I was always colleague facing or client facing. I learned far too late in life that I was an introvert working in an extrovert's world, which is a weird thing for a public speaker, a professional speaker to be saying. However, it's not about how we perform. It's not about how we deliver and how successful we are. It's about how we recharge. And as much as I love meeting everybody that I meet, yesterday I was full day in an environment in a law firm, having one-to-ones, delivering sessions. I loved meeting everybody. I had such a buzz from that, and I could go and deliver that effectively, and it had the desired impact. But there's a quiet, dark corner of the train I sat in afterwards, listened to some music, and then got my energy back. Always country music, by the way. It's not all about losing your doggy and misses, I promise. A lot of it is, to be fair, but a lot of it isn't. Hopefully there's some country fans out there right now. But it's about how we recharge. And knowing that now means that I can recharge effectively, but I didn't know that for a long time. What I found was I was always in work earlier than I had to be, always away from work later than I needed to be. In hindsight, that beautiful thing called hindsight, it was only fueled by me, that kind of paranoia, the fear of missing out, seeing everybody as competition. And when you see everybody as competition, you just see moving targets. You don't see the human experience. You miss so much. You don't see the collaborative experience of what it is to be human, even in professional environments as well. So certainly that had an impact on me. I was always running at a really high state of anxiety. What I've since learned is anxiety is regret from the past and fear of the future when it comes to my experience. But I was never living in the moment. I was always living in one of those two places, one of those two extremes. I was highly successful in what I did. I was always in sales, partnership, account management, highly successful, but really struggling. And we never see kind of everything as it plays out in real life until we have that benefit of hindsight. There's two reasons why I got to the point I did in 2012. The first one is masking behavior. We try and be what people want to see in us, especially in our professional lives. We try and be what situations demand of us, but we sure don't damn show ourselves, because when we show ourselves, that's when your fear kicks in. And very often your fear is false evidence appearing real. We are hardwired to look for danger. We are hardwired to look for fear. So guess what? You're going to find it. It's the home of procrastination. When you've got that project or that proposal or that application close to your chest, it's lovely. It's warm and it's fluffy and nobody can get at it. And then you let it go. And then it's there to be critiqued and criticized and judged and rejected. It's the home of imposter syndrome, something I speak about so much to members of your community, in your industry, in your sector. But I've never spoken to anybody yet who actually isn't very successful at what they do and absolutely deserve to be where they are, but the narrative is telling them they will get found out. They don't deserve to be where they are. They feel false. They feel like a fraud. But that's not reality. It's not a definition of your success or your performance. It's something in you, very often fueled by self-esteem, fueled by rejection, that's telling you these things and keeping you in that limiting belief. The second reason why I got to the point that I did in 2012 was, if I asked you to get your diary, your calendar out now, is there a part of your day to day and every day, just half an hour, was exclusively reserved for you to rest, recover, recharge so that you can go again strong tomorrow? And I bet you there isn't. But why are you the first person to go and help somebody else, but the last person to help yourself? This is a call for you to be selfish, to show compassion to yourself, because I know the community that you have is people. You love looking after people, but why do we not extend the same courtesy to ourselves? In 2012, after over a decade of burnout, I had a breakdown. And it was at that point that I started to use speaking as a therapy initially, especially in 2012. As a big guy, we didn't talk about mental illness and mental health challenges, but I started to speak about these things initially as therapy. It was a very selfish move. I encourage everybody to be selfish in that moment. But what I found was that by me sharing, being vulnerable, by sharing experiences from a very human-led perspective through lived experiences, it's now kind of tagged, that everyone started sharing their stuff with me. And I realized two things straight away. I can never be a coach. I can never be a counselor. Far too empathic for that. Felt massively overwhelmed. But I felt deeply saddened. Why is it that when we need help, we don't reach out for help? But you will be the first person to help somebody else. And that's what I started to do, is to work on bridging that gap between the solutions and the initiatives and people actually engaging in this stuff, especially when it comes to workplace environments as well. The rooms got bigger, the audiences got bigger, and the rest, as they say, is history. For the sake of this session, I just wanted to kind of touch on some things to give you a real 4D perspective on mental health and well-being, what will amplify the knowledge that you have, which will absolutely be complementary to the solutions that you have in place and the advice that's out there that I signpost to personally as well, to Mind, to Mental Health UK, to NHS, to some amazing organizations doing amazing things. So this isn't to replace this, just to sow the seeds of better questions for you. One of the things that I learned really early on was that actually, as peoples, we all are, we can do everything possible for somebody. Say the right things, do the right things, provide all the right tools, signpost them effectively. But actually what they choose to do with that information is completely on them. We can do everything that we can, but we cannot save anybody. I think that's really difficult to come to terms with sometimes, especially if your relationship is more personal than professional. but also understand that the same energy, the same impact, the same situation, the same event can happen to two different people and have two massively different reactions. The same force that destroys somebody is the same force that can be the catalyst for positive change. But very often it's not about what we do. We can only do so much. So actually, again, coming back to that selfish piece, to lay off the guilt a little as well. One of the biggest conversation pieces to have in the workplace environment for sure is actually one of the most damaging things is the use of the term mental health. Mental health is a neutral state. Whether it's good or bad, that's a whole different thing. It's certainly not mental illness, which absolutely is a very different thing, having experienced both of these things. But very often we'll catch ourselves saying, this guy, this girl's got mental health, as if it were a diagnosis, as if it were a bad thing. We all have mental health. 100% of us have mental health. But we should start to use the terminology better. If somebody is struggling, they have poor mental health, if they have mental illness, potentially, if they're at a point of crisis. And when we start to use the term respectfully, we start to change the way that we talk about this stuff. We start to break the stigma almost instantly. But when we start to see mental health as a muscle, something we can exercise and nurture and nourish and care for every single day, we start to see things very differently. We start to reclaim choice where we feel that there isn't any choice. One of the things that fascinates me and continues to fascinate me is, why do we do what we do? Why do I do what I do? Why do you do what you do? And for me, after a decade of conversations around this space, it comes down to one or many of three things. Conditioning. We become a product of our environment, looking at the environment behind the person that you're engaging with. I do a lot of work with the police force, as I said, and this is a very key area. Very often, the person that they are dealing with at the front end of things, the sharp end of things, is a result of everything that's gone on behind them. So very often, they have to take a bigger picture approach. The narrative is not about how you talk to other people. We can do that. We can be superficial. We could put that on. It's about actually how you talk to yourself. Are you reaffirming limiting beliefs? Are you talking yourself into a losing game or not? By default, we do look for danger. We look for fear. We do talk ourselves down. Doing work in different parts of the world as well is also important to recognize that this can be quite a British thing as well. Our relationship with self-care, very often we feel guilty when we put ourselves before anything or anyone. And that's kind of been trained into our culture. The final piece in the jigsaw is perspective. Now, your perspective is shaped by your religion, by your faith, by your politics, your choice of football club. I certainly wouldn't recommend being a Bristol Rovers fan such as me. You'll have grey in your beard and your hair is fine. But your perspective changes the world enough, which means that you will never see the world exactly as anybody else on this planet. I think it's really important to recognize. We can never assume somebody's experience or somebody's perspective. That your unique set of perspectives, narratives, conditioning makes you you, but you stand truly unique in this world. But it's not just the individual elements we tap into a global kind of consciousness around this as well, global element. If you look at this was put in place in the UK to protect us through the pandemic. This is not about the politics or the pandemic. This is the impact of any form of repeated messaging. As somebody was shielded through lockdown, this became a really weird soap opera. I saw this sign on the podiums at 5:30 every night with the Prime Minister and everybody else doing their thing, thinking, well, can I go back out again, please? After 8 months of seeing that, and when I first flew to an event, something I do very regularly, I saw danger everywhere where there was no danger before. Look at that guy with a mask on. Look at that guy without a mask on. Look at those people social distancing. Look at those people not social distancing. All these fears were there where there had no fears before, because the impact of this repeated messaging was inside is safe and outside isn't safe. And it still took me 4 months to find my new normal. Knowing what I know, surrounding myself with some of the world's leading thought leaders in this space, it still took me 4 months to find my new normal. And the reason I say this is because this is a call for compassion. There are still a lot of people out there still trying to find a new normal after what has been an extremely turbulent 4 years. Continues to be. You look at the conflict in Ukraine. I have clients in Ukraine who are dealing fantastically well with the conflict that's going on right outside the door right now. I have clients in Poland, a neighboring country, who have the potential threat of conflict, who are not dealing with it as well. Now, that's an interesting one. We can deal with fact, even if it's big and hairy and scary, we can deal with fact. What we cannot deal with is fear. on a very minor but very comical level, if you've ever had a row with your partner by text message, WhatsApp, or iMessage, you'll know that the three dots causes far more anxiety than the actual end of that conversation. As a general rule of thumb in life, skip the three dots, go straight for closure. It saves you a hell of a lot of pain. But yeah, I think there's something in that. We have fear unless we are dealing with something which is fact. If anybody is familiar with the practice of neuro-linguistic programming or NLP, you would recognize this image. I'm not a coach or a trainer, but I do like to read loads, listen to loads, watch loads. This image really jumped out at me. It's taken from NLP, where actually this is a great example of perspective. The closer you are to the side of this huge grey elephant, all you see is wall-to-wall grey leather. That is your experience of the world until you take a step back. But a lot of us are trained not to change perspective. I remember in my corporate training in my early 20s, worryingly long time ago, I was told to lead through instruction. You tell people what to do and they'll do it. And if they don't do it, you say it louder. Interesting. Doesn't work, by the way, especially now. Now more than ever, it's about emotional leadership. It's your ability to change perspective. It's your ability to listen to people and have better conversations. But also recognize that you're going to be the first to stand in your own way. This is kind of me. So after lockdown, I realized I was put on a lot of weight. I wanted to get fitter. I wanted to get healthier. And I thought, okay, what can I do? So I did the thing that I tell people not to do. I said, I should go to the gym. Okay. So I went to the gym and I walked around with a towel and a water bottle and tried to look busy. Then I realized after 3 days, I hated the gym. So I doffed my cap to any gym goers here. I'm very proud of you. But we only ever follow through on things that we're emotionally connected to. So I had to ask myself the question, I wanted to do something, but what do I do? What am I emotionally connected to? What do I love to do? I love swimming. My teens, my childhood, my early 20s, I love swimming with an absolute passion. So why don't I go swimming now? Spirit of honesty, body image. I didn't want to get this out semi-naked in front of a room full of strangers. There was a clear and obvious answer which would tick every box, but I refused to take it because it was uncomfortable. It pushed me out of my comfort zone. But that's what I did. Day 4, I turned right for the pool, so left for the gym. Took my clothes off. Not all of them. That'd be weird, even where I live. I jumped in the pool, and not only did nobody care, but the other crazy people that get up at silly o'clock in the morning to go swimming swam over and say hello. And suddenly I had community. I was doing something that I chose to do, something that I enjoy doing. And as a byproduct, it started to get me fitter, to lose weight, and do all the things I wanted to achieve. That answer was there all along, but I refused to take it because it was uncomfortable. What are you putting off in your life? And actually, what's your mission? For so long in life that we can pick up other people's missions. When I first left school, I joined the family business. It was a factory. It made widgets and it had machines and factories and all the kind of different things. It had an office. It had a lovely office. It was an 80s office. It was mahogany walls, mahogany desks. And sadly, due to the separation of her family and the recession at the time, the business closed, and therefore the future that I had was taken away. And for so long, I was building a career kind of based on this principle of I wanted to own a factory with maple mahogany desks, mahogany walls, and I wanted to have machines and workers and make widgets. I don't know why, because what I'd done, I'd inadvertently picked up somebody else's mission. I wanted to correct the family name in that sense. It's so easy to pick up somebody else's mission. Are you doing something through choice? Or actually, are you doing this for a different reason? I tried to qualify, certainly with my OCD tendencies, which very much are still in play today, but largely, thankfully, under control, and it's not really tired. But that's a great way to qualify things. This thing that I'm doing right now, especially people pleasing, you look at people pleasing, am I doing this through obsession? Am I doing this because actually this is creating some form of unrest in my mind? Am I doing this through compulsion? So am I just doing this to please somebody, to make them, to kind of make them like me more? Or actually am I choosing to do this? This is my choice that I want to do, that I'm happy doing, and I choose to do this action. If we start to qualify all of our actions this way, it's amazing how much we can start to set out on a mission to get to know ourselves again. But when you are stuck in a rut, this 3-step process for me is a lifesaver. even from a professional point of view, in March 2020, for obvious reasons, my business died overnight. I had no online presence in terms of content and delivery. All of my stuff was done in person. And again, that's not a sob story. Everyone's had their own stuff to go through. But this process not only helped me through my breakdown, but also helped me from a professional level as well. Because when you are stuck in a rut, you need to find acceptance. Now, anyone who's been through counseling or therapy, I won't ask for a show of hands, that'd be a really weird high five and woo. You know, the toughest thing to find, but the first thing that we try to find is acceptance. To fully accept that everything that you've ever done before, everything that you've ever said before, everyone you've ever been before has led to exactly where you are today, watching this right here, right now. That is the undeniable truth because you are here and you are watching this. But sometimes acceptance is brutal and it's tough because some of your experiences have been tough and they've been brutal. They've been painful. They've been not of your choosing. They're things that you've struggled to come to terms with. But without acceptance, you build a future based on fear. You see, hurt people, and that's exactly what I was doing. I was doing this talk, by the way, as an aside. I can trust you with this. In a conference in Manchester a couple of years ago, wondered why the audience was laughing, and apparently I said, every one you've ever done has led to where you are right now. There's an element of truth in that as well, to be fair, but we'll skirt around that one. When you do find acceptance, though, on whatever has gone before in your life, you then start to build a future based on the principle it's what you do next that counts. It's the ultimate self-acceptance piece for me. It's the ultimate self-awareness piece. It's extreme resilience to actually fully accept you do not live in a Disney movie. You will get knocked down. It's about how do you come back from that as fast as you can. Starting with survival. How long can you stay there? If you've worked out you need to make a change, if you need to go in a new direction, or there's something you want to sort out in life, survival, give it a time frame. How long can you stay there? See, the interesting thing in your community, you are amazing at doing this in a professional context. You give yourself a professional work challenge, you will work through it as a project, a proposal, application. Why do we not apply the same logic to our personal challenges? Interesting. The evolution part is changing our relationship with change. If I said to you tomorrow, there's going to be a huge change, you're going to think, A, it's going to be negative, B, it's going to find you and you alone, and C, it's going to punch you in the face and run away. That's kind of how we feel about change. But take it from an old guy looking back. Look at these grey streaks in the beard. It's only been through the periods of chaos that the magic has happened. It's only been through the periods of adversity that the most exciting things have happened, but you never see it at the time. Hindsight is that beautiful thing that you only ever see that this was forging you for something better. This was helping you to learn, to evolve, to grow. But in the moment, it feels like the world is closing in on you. So when you next find yourself in a negative or a bad situation, even the most bleak situations, you can ask yourself the question, what does this make possible? And suddenly you'll start to see the opportunity where there is none to be found normally. You start to see the light in the darkness, and then you start to come through these things. And if you're the one that's trying to help somebody else to bring them and cross them that line in the sand, just know that it's near on impossible to help somebody. You cannot be the savior. You cannot be the healer. You can bring people to that line in the sand, but unless they cross that line themselves, true change cannot happen in my experience. We can catch them the other side, but very often our energy, our emotion gets sapped by trying to help other people that actually don't want to be helped to that point. This is where we need to really connect with professional help. I was going to talk about boundaries, but I think boundaries are covered quite a lot in your space. So I want to talk about the one thing that really does affect boundaries, and that's managing expectations. And the reason I say that, if I had an individual conversation with you about how you want to live, how you want to learn, how you want to work, your boundaries, you would know this stuff. That isn't the problem. The problem is communicating your boundaries to everybody else to manage their expectations. So if your email response time pre-pandemic was 4 hours, and now it's 8 hours, great. Your boundary is my email response time is 8 hours. But unless you communicate that to your clients, to your colleagues, to your executives, nothing changes. The stress levels only increase. So it's about managing expectations. This isn't Albert Einstein, as somebody said yesterday. This is Mark Twain paraphrasing that some of the worst things in my life never actually happened. And how true is that? We are constantly trying to create anxiety about things that never actually happen. I do an amazing tour with an amazing lady, my neuroboffin, as I call her, Helen, and she is solution focused. She is a therapist. She specializes in the brain and neuroscience, and I'm not. I just do my thing alongside her. But she says if you create anxiety or stress or worry about a situation that's going on in your life right now, you damage yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally because your brain does not recognize when something is created or something is actually happening in front of it. It's an amazing thing that we can damage ourselves that way without any of these things happening. And I wanted to test this theory back in the day. In 2012, on day one of my recovery, I started to keep something called a worry journal, which is like a gratitude journal, but a bit screwed up. I wrote down everything that made me highly anxious, or the byproducts of high anxiety. So they, for me, were jealousy and insecurity were huge, defensive and aggressive behavior, lethargy and lack of energy, erratic behavior, all of these things. Certainly my biggest red flag now is high hypersensitivity. When I feel the world's happening at me and not around me, that's my time to check back in again to make sure I'm doing okay. And on day one, there were 128 entries. Welcome to OCD and GAD, my friends. But of the 128 entries, when I checked back 2 weeks later, absolutely none of them happened. But 128 times that day alone, I damaged myself mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally about stuff that never happens. What are you stressing about this week? What's really going through your head? What you anxious about? Fact check it. Is this actual fact? Is this happening? And is it something that's tangible? And if so, skip the three dots, go straight for closure. Or is it the story that I'm telling myself about this? And very often you'll find it's the narrative, it's the assumption was creating the problem. Unless you are a medical professional or a qualified therapist or practitioner, which I'm absolutely not, and I'm assuming most of you won't be, but the one thing I have kind of really learned from working with your networks and your industry or sector over the past 6-7 years now is actually you're going to have more trust and rapport with your colleagues, with your executive, with the people around you, personally and professionally. So much trust and rapport because if they trust you with their business, with their life, they're going to trust you with everything. And they will have conversations when they are struggling. But our role is not to fix people when it comes to mental health. Our role also isn't to hide. Our role is our ability to ask better questions, is to listen to people. And that's exactly what I do. So given the space that I operate in, I have hundreds of conversations every month from people that could be struggling with different aspects of life as an active signposting conversation. But the first thing I do is give them an upfront agreement. I will say, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And genuinely, I mean that. Very humbled when people decide to share with me. But as you know, I am not solution focused. I'm not a counselor, a coach, or a GP. But I'll listen to you as much as you want to be listened to. I'll support you as much as I can. And then I'm going to signpost you to the help that could be really good for you right now. Is that okay with you? Ask them the question. By giving that upfront agreement on how you want to engage around this conversation, not only do you take away the kind of sensitivity of it, but also you manage their expectations. You safeguard them and you've safeguarded yourself. So actually you've protected yourself enough to have more conversations and more people about this stuff, and you still get a good night's sleep, which is always a bonus. Ask an open, emotionally led questioning. So a great example would be, you've probably done it lots today already. How are you? I'm great, thanks. How are you? But how are you feeling? That's a small example of an emotionally led open question. Don't judge people. But it looks great on Instagram, I'm told. I've not been on social media for a long time now, but don't judge people. It looks great on Instagram. Pink glittery background, silver writing. Don't judge people. But let's face it, you're judging me. If I could see you, I'll be judging you. It's a very human trait in the first 7 to 10 seconds of any interaction. But there's a difference. We can look at people, converse with people, have open conversations, support people without having to imprint our beliefs onto people, without taking a competitive approach to winning them over to our way of thinking. It's not about that, because in a room of 200 people, you can have 200 different experiences of life and business right now. Now more than ever, it's about human to human conversations, not being afraid to ask questions about things you don't understand. That's something I'm so passionate about. I think fueled by cancel culture, social media, popular media, we're so terrified about asking better questions. My take on this is I'm a 46-year-old white straight guy. There's so much I do not understand in life. So if there's something I don't understand, I speak to people that have that experience or have that specialism. And if you ask people questions with a need to educate, with a need to be curious, people were always very happy to talk to you about their experiences and their specialisms. So don't be afraid to ask better questions. I tend to focus on why people don't engage in workplace help as opposed to why people should. And I think that has a bigger impact on amplifying engagement. What I mean by that is, why don't people engage in workplace initiatives? When actually, if you have the benefit of working for a large employer, your fastest route to help will not be societally, it will not be publicly, it will be through your employer. So why don't people do that? Anonymity, far and away the biggest challenge. We have a fear that we're going to be dismissed or judged or ridiculed for reaching out for help, or it may be seen as a weakness. Trust me, as somebody that works in this space all the time, I work with EAP providers, with HR leaders. I create content for CIPD and HR director and lots of different publications. All of these things are completely anonymous to engage in. The second thing is cost, especially right now, societally, economically. We have an area of challenge when it comes to money. So if a solution is free to access, we need to communicate that it's free to access. The final one is quite base, is quite human, is our conditioning. I know when I needed help, the narrative that went through my head that was given to me by generations of men before me were, don't trust work with your personal stuff. Interesting. So that's the reason why I didn't reach out for help when I needed it. So actually, what story are you telling yourself? Remove those barriers and engage with confidence. The number that I like to always distribute and anything that I'm doing is the number for the Samaritans. In their own words, they're massively underused because people feel that you have to be suicidal or at a point of crisis to phone them. And absolutely, they do cover those areas. But even if you just feel you need someone to talk to, that you have loneliness or depression, or you just want to bounce around something, phone the Samaritans, have the number in your book. And if you are somebody who is keen to support others, having this number in your phone book is really handy, because I've been in conversations where I've actually phoned them for somebody I'm sat with at the time and passed a phone across. You can make it a collaborative experience in that sense. And I know it's a massively overused adage, but it's absolutely true. We do need to put our oxygen mask on first to be strong enough to help everybody else around us, or we will go down screaming with everybody else. That's the reality. We need to be selfish to prioritize us. Somebody said to me once, I expected you to look like Joe Wicks. I'm a fat Joe Wicks. I'll take that. I've called a lot worse. But I think therein lies the problem. When it comes to mental health and well-being generally, especially in professional environments, we have these labels that we kind of give things, and we either think it's going to be dry and clinical and boring, and certainly not clinical, hopefully not the other two either, but or it's going to be fluffy. I'm going to light a bonfire outside, run around naked with a joss stick in my mouth. I'm up for anything, by the way. Sorry to put that image in your head if you're just about to eat, by the way. We need to come away from those two extremes of thinking and actually realize that your well-being is made up by these 10 things, for example. It's very nuts and bolts approach. And if you really want to get laser focused on your personal development, sit down on a Monday morning with a cup of coffee or a beverage of your choice and score these things out of 10. 10 being excellent, 1 being dire. Where am I on these things right now? The lowest scoring thing, that's where you put all of your attention on your personal development time or professional development time for that week. Get laser focused with the challenges you're experiencing. And I'm not the guy to talk about nutrition, hydration, sleep, or all exercise, or all the great stuff yet. As a disclaimer for this episode, please do all those things. They're amazing. I hope it's a good enough disclaimer for the team here. However, there's things that we miss, and those things that we miss are actually quite a human experience again. I want you to set on a mission to get to know yourself again. Do a little bit of mind mapping. I love mind mapping. Get a big piece of paper. I say paper because I'm an ex-stationer, but even on a screen, the mind mapping software, put your name in the middle and put all the parts and players of your life and actually start to label your emotional connection to all these things. Ask yourself the question, who in my life nourishes me? Who gives me energy? And then who depletes me? Who takes away my energy? And then what in my life nourishes me? And what takes away my energy? What depletes me? This is not about eradicating the negative. It's about taking a proactive approach to resilience. Because our approach tends to be, we run ourselves into the ground until we're absolutely shattered and then work out how the hell we're going to come back from this. What I want you to do is start to look ahead to what you've got coming up and making sure your battery is as fully charged as possible before you go into those situations. One of the things that I love using is music. Music is so powerful. Music can lift your state instantly. For me, it's country music. I appreciate it's not for everybody. If you like Morrissey or the Smiths, it works the other way as well. It can bring you right down. But just start to kind of build a playlist of music that really lifts you, that really inspires you. And it's a great brain hack that you can start to have something on demand which just lifts you straight away before that big conversation, before that meeting, on your way into work, the commute, wherever that may be in your world. Have some music which just lifts you. All of the music in that playlist is aimed to lift you. If you're doing anything which is high energy, I find this with speaking gigs, for example. I have a playlist of music which will bring me back down later on in the soft way as well. It's a nice slow paced music, kind of rhythmic music. I could not be friends with these people. They got far too much energy for my liking. Woo! Anyway, there's an American author, Jim Rohn, who says you are the average of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with. His reasoning for this: if you've got 5 colleagues or 5 friends, then firstly, you'll be doing better than I have. But if one of them is highly aggressive, the dynamic of the group raises to meet the aggressor. Everybody becomes angrier or rebels against the aggressor. It can never be in a positive or neutral state. A strong emotional leader has the opposite effect. You can lift people, you can raise people, and it can never be in a negative state. He also said if you don't know who the angry person is, it's usually you. No, I'm joking. I've added that back in. But I see this play out in prisons. I see this play out in schools. Certainly, not exclusively, but especially with males, that has to happen. That we all lead. The alpha leads the group. So actually, think about your environment, personally and professionally. Are you in an environment which challenges you to thrive on your terms? Do you live in an environment which allows you to share an opinion and be supported to follow that opinion through to an outcome, even if you're going to be wrong? Do you feel confident to say yes to people you want to say yes to, no to people you want to say no to? These are the big questions we need to be asking ourselves to make sure our environment is gearing us up for success, for whatever that means in a very subjective word in your world. And when you take on any big challenge, it's big and hairy and scary. Break it down into its smallest parts. Sports coaches call this marginal gains, daily, incremental, consistent changes. What's the smallest thing you can do tomorrow to point yourself in a better direction? It takes away the boom and bust and the overwhelm of any transformation. Same principles couched to 5K. You run a little bit faster, a little bit longer every day. Eventually, you run 5K. Apparently, I give up at week 4 consistently. So I'll let you know when I get there as well. This is Tula, my little Shih Tzu. She really is a little Shih Tzu as well, but she's been brilliant today. She's not barking in the background. Bonus. But it's all about emotional connection. We have an emotional connection. Dogs are great for that. Dogs are great for unconditional love, unlike humans. I can take the rubbish out, 20 seconds later, come back in. She's going, "It's you, you're amazing, and I haven't seen you in 20 seconds. Woo!" You need that in your life. I've been on tour for 2 weeks, come back, and my wife goes, "All right, get a dog." Anyway, so it's all about emotional connection. What are you emotionally connected to? Because that's what we actually follow through on as well. And I've got to finish with a country music quote, because it's kind of my thing. And that quote is, "Every storm runs out of rain." I think it's a great track by Gary Allan as well, for those who are into country music. But I think we genuinely need to know that. I think every storm we've ever been through, you've at least survived, you at least learned, you do evolve, and you do forge ahead, but you don't see it at the time. Hindsight is a beautiful thing. You see, it's when people lose hope, or the hope of something better, that's when the world gets quite a dark and dangerous place for a lot of people. Our role is to support people, is to give them hope, or the hope of something better. It's not to fix them. So employ fantastic conversations, ask better questions, and make sure, above all, be selfish. Protect yourself, look after yourself, so that you are good to go every single day, regardless of the storm that's happening at the time. And that's me. So thank you very much for joining my session today. It's been a real pleasure to be here. I love the work I do in your space. It's one of the friendliest groups I work in as well. So cool. I hope that's been of value to you. But if you do want to reach out to me, it's nick@nickelston.com. Doesn't go to my team, comes straight to me directly, and of course, completely confidential. I am on LinkedIn and also on TikTok. That's kind of new, so bear with me on that. I also have a YouTube channel with lots of different content, a website, and also the podcast. For the first 8 seasons, it's called The Nick Elston Show. But later this year, Forge Ahead with Nick Elston's happening, where we'll tackle different subjects on a weekly basis. The QR code on the right takes you to my home screen app that you can download to your phone. Has some amazing signposting tools, access to things like NHS and Mind and Mental Health UK as well. So please do take a picture or a screenshot of that for your phone too. But can I just say also a big thank you to Jermaine and the team, Lucy, for having me here. It's been a real pleasure to support you with this. And I hope our paths cross again very soon. And if we do meet in person, warning now, I am a hugger. So you'll have to tell me no hugs just in case. But enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care, guys. Bye. Bye.